Jim McHarris was a transgender man who lived his life having socially transitioned during the 50s. Unfortunately, he never got to see the end of that transition. So Jim was born in Meridian, Mississippi in 1924. His parents died early in his childhood. Jim was raised by two sets of foster parents, and from a very young age expressed a strong distaste for anything feminine, except for women. The young Jim McHarris would often slip away to Jackson to hang out with friends. Jim found a lot of comfort in religion, and because of his genuine, sincere personality, he even became close friends with the bishop of a local tabernacle church, Bishop Smiley Jones. It was around this time that Bishop Smiley Jones noticed that Jim was not only attracted to women, but preferred men's clothing and living as a man as well. Now, the cool thing about Bishop Smiley Jones is that he knew about Jim's secret, which was at the time a secret, and he respected that. The church members said that his protection of Jim was indecent, but Bishop Jones just said, "I don't feel like it did any harm though." He's a legend for that, I'm sorry. So Jim transitioned in his early teens, and from around 1939, he started to move around the country quite a lot, presumably because of safety reasons and also just a general sense of not belonging quite anywhere. So during his transmasc life, Jim lived in Memphis, Chicago, and many other cities. In that 15-year period, he was known as a restless traveler, and he also worked as a short order cook, a taxi driver, a gas station attendant, a car mechanic, a shipyard worker, and even a preacher. And this was how he was able to ease some of his gender dysphoria by choosing the roughest jobs. Even Jim's landlady called him little brother. And with his handsome baby face and his husky figure, Jim didn't have any trouble pulling ladies, okay? He got women. Now, Jim was about 5'5", and he had many girlfriends, including one whom he often referred to as his wife. Now, in November 1954, an issue of Ebony came out, which covered the event that would change the trajectory of Jim's life. Now, this took place in Kosciuszko, Mississippi. Hope I said that right. So one night, Jim was driving along, and he got pulled over by a white police officer for improper lights, which apparently was a common excuse for white police officers to harass and intimidate black drivers. Now, when the cop pulled Jim over, he did find alcohol in the car. Now, when the cop attempted to search the man's person, that was when Jim was like, "Take it easy, I'm a woman." This confused the police officer because the driving license said Jim McHarris. Now, unfortunately, Ebony magazine's covering of this story was outrageous. It was abusive by today's standards, kind of making fun of him, because the Ebony article then launched into an account of Jim McHarris's arrest, which was humiliating, and the trial, which gets even worse. So before he was sentenced to 30 days in jail, Ebony's article referred to what followed next as a courtroom striptease. So Jim walked into a nearby closet to remove his clothing, as per the instruction of the court, to show that he was indeed female anatomically. So Jim walked out with his shirt open to show the cloth wrappings that he used to bind his chest. In the words of Ebony, this is the moment when Jim McHarris revealed himself to be no man at all, but a fully developed, big-chested woman. Now, the writers at Ebony purposely ignored Jim's transgender status and continued to refer to him as a woman posing as a man, which just shows Ebony up because all those who were near and close to Jim McHarris, when they were interviewed, referred to him with his he/him pronouns. Jim was a well-liked and respected man in the community. And instead of taking those comments as support and testament to the fact that he was a good person, what Ebony did was they used it to say, look, this is evidence, this is more evidence that he was able to fool the general public. So not only are they describing his experience in a public spectacle kind of way, but they are literally misgendering him on purpose and thus, eradicating his experience and his existence as a transgender man. So Evelyn Hammonds also spoke on the fact that Ebony chose to continue disrespecting Jim McHarris and his identity. She described it as making him invisible, but at the same time hyper-visible in the way that they would describe his physical features and, objectify him as a woman. Ebony was accused of over-schmegdualizing the entirety of Jim's being. Now, this gender revelation caused an uproar in the town, and that's when Jim's longtime friend, Bishop James, came under fire from the local residents and citizens because, in their eyes, this was wrong. Him being friends with Jim and him protecting Jim. Now, according to the article, the people most upset by this news were the cis women that Jim had been dating, as well as a woman who he dated while he was living in Memphis. She admitted in the Ebony article that he had been giving her money. Jim was given the option of either paying a $100 fine or spending 30 days in jail. Now, while Jim was working his sentence, he continued to dress in men's clothes, and he worked in the prison kitchen, but he was housed with a female prisoner. Now, this is where it gets a bit heartbreaking. Now, when he finished his sentence, Jim stepped out into Kosciuszko and found that the vibe had changed. People were frosty to him, people were no longer talking to him, no longer his friends. So he felt it was time to move on again. He said in the article, as he gathered and packed his belongings and prepared to move to Jackson, Mississippi, "I ain't done nothing wrong and I ain't breaking no laws." Now, I love this for Jim because he decided to live his life permanently as a man after all this. One thing he didn't do was register as a man, as all American men had to do during the time of military drafting. He was like... Now, unfortunately, this was the end of the road for Jim McHarris, certainly as far as the name goes anyway, because after 1955, no record of him can be found. And while he did serve some of his prison sentence as his government name, he may, because of that traumatic experience, have decided to get rid of the name Jim McHarris and start anew with a new identity in a new state. Presumably Jackson, but maybe he went somewhere else. One thing is clear is that Jim McHarris, the soul that lived in that body, tried to stay undocumented after his release from prison. Jim, or James McHarris, is now an official part of US Black heritage. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like and follow for more.